Choose your fighter. Kyle versus Trevor.
Hello all, and welcome to another episode of King's Chaos. I'm your host, Kyle Pepitone, aka the Kyng-Pin, parentheses, of Spades, and I am joined once again with my special guest, Trevor. How are you?
I've been well. I've been very busy with stuff, but it's
finals
always
coming
nice.
up.
It's always nice to be on the show. It's always nice to talk about stuff, and yeah.
Yeah. It's fun, especially these movie ones, and I kind of want to do a couple more of them too, because we talked about movies and streaming services last time you were on, and but there are a lot of specific movies coming out soon too, or new movies that have come out and are coming out soon that I'm actually excited for, because 2020 was a slow year, obviously, for obvious reasons.
It was.
But even the movies that did come out, there were none of them really caught my attention. And then this year came around, and I know it's not a movie, but WandaVision got me hooked. The new Mortal Kombat movie, which is today's topic in question. And I'm sure there's a third example that I can't possibly think of, but that's where I stand at currently in the movies. 4 months into 2021 somehow, because I don't know how that's possible, but we're almost in May. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
But I have to ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You first.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, it's just been a weird year and stuff in terms of movies and content and stuff.
Yeah.
Last year was very weird, but this year is more we're getting an explosion of content.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting new Marvel stuff every week for the rest of the year, because Falcon and the Winter Soldier just finished yesterday at the time of recording this, I believe. Yeah. And then I believe we're going to get the behind the scenes this week as of recording. It's very complicated with pre-recorded stuff to throw out dates, but so yesterday, so the 24th, so that would make it the 30th actually. I think is when the behind the scene come out, and then there's something in between there. I'm pretty sure Black Widow's in May. And then
no, Black Widow got pushed to June.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's
Black
a shame.
Widow got pushed to July, I think. Yeah, July.
Wow. Okay.
So unfortunately, the Black Widow movie is releasing in July.
Dang it. I was kind of looking forward to that. I mean, it's already been pushed back a lot.
It's already been pushed back enough where it's just I don't think there's a lot of interest for it.
Oh.
And I think I don't want to get into semantics here, and just because it's a whole other thing and stuff.
Right, but I see what you're saying. Because it's been pushed back so far, and we've gotten all this other stuff that people are still interested, but it's not going to reach that same level as if it had come out last year.
Yes.
And I think, well, in my personal opinion, I think that's just going to be the problem with anything Marvel puts out for me from now on. I will compare everything they put out now to WandaVision, and I don't know if anything can beat that.
Yeah, I finished Falcon and Winter Soldier, and it just felt like it wasn't... It had good moments, but it had a lot of flaws.
Right.
It had a ton of flaws that I can't... It's the episode count, the pacing issues, some of the script writing felt on the nose at times.
Oh, really?
Some of the character moments felt very out of place for that character. It was a bunch of things.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah, I don't know too much. I fell out after episode 2. Just because, I got caught up in work and I didn't really have time to watch it. And just because, I like the Winter Soldier and I like Falcon as characters, but I'm not as invested in them as I am Wanda and Vision. So I just haven't found it in me to catch up yet.
Yeah, it's like, how do I explain it without? It's just some of the things they did was just mildly frustrating at times.
I can
Like
imagine, yeah.
they just didn't think about certain concepts and certain story ideas.
Oh, really?
And I've told people like I don't want to get into everything. I have problems with it, but it's just like
Right.
that'd take up its own show because it's really frustrating. But we're here talking to, like, I think it would be better to focus on the that last movie that came out on HBO Max,
Yeah.
which was
Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat.
I've been waiting for it because
Yeah.
it came out in theaters like mid-April, but it didn't release on HBO until just yesterday. Yesterday being the 23rd.
No, it released the same day.
Oh, really?
It released the same day in theaters and stuff.
Oh, then I'm just not caught up then. I thought I had to wait for it.
No.
Oops. Well, I don't know what to say now. I feel I look really dumb. But I did, like, I woke up yesterday morning with enough time before my class, and I watched the movie before I did anything else yesterday. And I got to say, I genuinely enjoyed the movie. I found myself at the start, like, kind of nitpicking things like, oh, that line's kind of ridiculous. I don't love that character design. Oh, maybe they could have done this. But then watching the movie, I'm like, this is actually a good time.
It doesn't look as bad as the one from the 90s. And
Oh, yeah, totally.
And it's just like, it doesn't look as ridiculous because the thing that I say to you is like, the thing that I like about it is how they just go full ham into it. How they go full, like, into the lore and stuff. And they just don't care about, like, leaving people by the wayside and laughing about it later.
You mean the 2021 version, right?
Yeah, the 2021 version. And this is not only, like, the version that we seen before, which is,
Right.
I think back in the early days, like around 2010 and 2011, YouTube, I think there was this Mortal Kombat Reborn
Oh, really?
on YouTube. Yeah.
Like a YouTube series?
Like a YouTube web series where I like somebody pointed out to me again and they said like, oh yeah, remember that show? Remember that YouTube web series where they did the Mortal Kombat characters and they redid them and stuff?
Oh, that's so interesting. I've never heard about this. I'm gonna have to look it up.
Yeah. So it was like kind of like a fan film, but it was actually mandated by like WB said, yeah, we're gonna let you have those characters.
Oh, wow. That's really good. Well, good for them.
And I don't want to get into everything about it, but I saw parts of it when it was releasing, and it was really good, parts of it.
Wow.
I think this is the thing that Mortal Kombat is one of those series that you can't take it so seriously.
Yeah. No,
It's like one of those series, they have a giant creature that has 4 arms. Like, that's ridiculous in its own right. The video game has ridiculous things about it, like the fatalities and stuff.
Yeah, the whole game is over the top. It present like the stylistic, the style of it is very like realistic and grim. But if you actually get into the game, it's completely ridiculous. And I think that's what this movie did good. It told a good story, but it didn't take itself super seriously. It's like, we know what Mortal Kombat is. We're going to embrace that. And that's what caught me off guard. I didn't expect it to be so violent. Like,
yeah, it's one of those things where I know it. I know the video game is really violent. Yeah. And we can't get into everything about the certain violent scenes.
No, we got to be very careful with what we say on air.
Because certain things that happen in the game, certain combo things, I don't know how to say them without getting in big trouble.
Yeah, I know what you mean though.
But some of them are so over the top and so ridiculous that they make Final Destination They make the Final Destination They make the Final Destination stuff look nothing by comparison. They make it look like nothing. Like
That is the best way to put it. I've never heard that, and I think that is the best way to describe Mortal Kombat.
yeah,
Because the
like,
Final Destination ones are bad too. Some of them are really bad.
I think somebody also said one of my favorite YouTubers. He said like Final Destination is like the world of breadsticks and jelly. He said the physics of that is like breadsticks and jelly, and he actually said the physics does not make sense in that franchise. It does not.
Yeah, no, a lot. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief in that one.
Yeah, but it's just so funny to me that it's just like that's the best way to explain. That's the best way to explain Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
it is.
And like I know this has to do stuff with like technology's better since the '90s or whatever, but the movie itself looked really good.
Yeah, like I think this is the thing we're starting to see a little bit more of is like the fact that films are starting to look a lot better, even if they're really ridiculous and they're really over the top. Like that's the thing. That's the thing with like the more recent Godzilla movie. It looks beautiful. It looks breathtaking.
Right.
And it just looks, all the cinematography and stuff looks amazing. Like, you cannot just say that and be like, oh, like, you don't understand this. No, we're actually saying the fact that we're getting to the point where even like a fan film can look really good.
Oh, yeah. Like, people are shooting movies on their iPhones somehow. Yeah. I can't figure it out, but apparently other people have. And it looks fantastic. And we might not need big over-the-shoulder cameras anymore in a few years.
Yeah, this is the thing that I really think that one of the points that I find about like video games and video game movies, they're very hard to like translate.
Yeah, definitely.
Some of them are so hard to translate. Like I've seen more bad video game movies than really good ones.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, you have to be a fan of it first.
Right.
Before you understand how to make an actual version of that movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how to make an actual live-action version of a video game movie.
Yeah, and I think same thing goes for pretty much adapting anything from one form of media to another. You have to not only understand the material, but enjoy it, too. Like, I've mentioned this before, but lately I've been getting into a lot into like video game music. So like artists like Nate Wants to Battle, DA Games, all those people who write original songs inspired by video games.
Yeah.
And I find myself liking the songs more of I find myself liking the songs that were inspired by video games I knew. There we go.
Yeah, that's a good way. Because like it's fans actually doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like fans actually respecting what the source material was doing.
Exactly.
And it goes to this idea of like, how do you, like, as a filmmaker, as me being like a filmmaker and a film student, you have to understand, you have to sometimes take yourself out of being a fan and how you're going to tell this kind of story.
Right.
As a filmmaker and as a storyteller.
Yeah.
And put in little nods for the fans that even if they like it, they're going to still have like big moments like that. So one of the things that I find about the recent Mortal Kombat movie is just the fact that even though the director is not a fan of Mortal Kombat, he put in things like certain the fatalities and stuff like that.
Right,
he put in stuff like that. He put in things that felt like real, like even though he wasn't a fan of the game, he understood what the game was.
Right.
Even if he's not like the most well-known person and well-known director, he understands it. And you have like, I think James Wan produced it.
Oh, really?
So James Wan actually probably is a fan of the video game, so he knows probably is one of the few directors that actually understands that stuff.
Right.
But you don't have a lot of people like that. You don't have a lot of people in Hollywood who understand like what really goes into an actual like video game movie to make it good.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like even like other like adaptations like comic book movies, you have some people who don't really understand what goes into it. I'm not going to throw out specifics, but Justice League. Um,
Yeah.
not the Snyder version, but
I think I think the Justice League from 2017 was the kind of movie that DC wanted to be like Marvel.
yeah,
But DC can't be Marvel because Marvel is like fun and happy-go-lucky and stuff.
DC is just inherently darker. They have been with
Yeah.
the comic books, and that's how they translate to movie. I think the 2017 Justice League was a very studio heavy, like influenced project.
Yes, it was. I can't go into everything that I know about the movie, but there are things that I know that
Yeah.
just like you'll be like, yeah, it's definitely studio mandated.
Yeah, and especially talking to like doing research for the JusticeCon interview we did, like everybody on that project, like all the actors, they just had to go through some seriously not good stuff. Like it doesn't sound like it was fun to refilm, or not refilm, but film the 2017 version.
No, and it was very clear to me that it wasn't the kind of movie that you wanted to like fully exactly talk about and stuff.
Right.
Because I just think it's one of those things where as a fan of like the Snyder Cut, you can't just tell people, oh, it's not great. It's just like, no, what we're seeing is this. The studio kind of did things that was not for the characters and did not work for the characters.
Right.
But when you look at like something like let's say like going back to like the early 2000s with like a movie like Tomb Raider from the early 2000s with Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
That was a movie that genuinely is considered by many to be a really not good movie because they didn't understand who the character was.
Right. You mean like the director and the studio didn't understand the character?
Yeah. Basically, the thing with Tomb Raider is she's basically a female version of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
That's it. Basically, plain and simple. Anybody in their right mind could tell you that. It's Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we're starting to see is like certain video games are starting to actually click and make sense with certain studios, but certain people are not like understanding that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I've seen like one of the best people to talk to is one of the best interviews that I've read was the upcoming interview with Jordan Vogt Roberts.
Oh, okay.
So he's the guy who directed Kong Skull Island. This is getting really nerdy. He is directing the upcoming Metal Gear Solid movie.
Didn't know there was one of those.
So if you want to hear how much passionate he is for that movie, he is a fan. You can tell straight up that he's a fan of Metal Gear Solid. He respects the source material. He talks about it at length. He talked to Hideo Kojima about the game.
Oh, wow.
What he would do with it in the movie and that stuff. So he talked with Hideo Kojima, and Hideo's like, yeah, I want him to direct it.
I mean, that sounds like a man with a passion and a vision.
And he talked about it, and then recently they casted Oscar Isaac in the role of Solid Snake.
Oh, cool.
So we don't know when it's going to come out and stuff.
Right, yeah.
But the idea is that he talks about this idea of like, there's never a really good video game movie. There's never been.
Yeah.
Because this is like something that this is one of the things that I find interesting about him. He's a gamer first and a filmmaker second.
Oh, really?
So he sees himself more into the video game stuff, but he said, there's never been a good video game because nobody understands how to correlate that first-person concept into a narrative concept.
Right.
And Jordan Vogt Roberts, when he directed Kong Skull Island, it felt like I was watching like Apocalypse Now meets like King Kong.
Oh, okay.
Like Kong Skull Island was awesome and stuff, and the visuals and stuff. he's a very good storyteller and a very good filmmaker. And I did not expect that. But this idea that he brought up is like, the reason why so many video game movies are so bad is because like it's taking that narrative structure of like a video game.
Yeah.
Of like that whole overall concept of like a first person perspective. And then putting that into a movie. And then trying to fit that point of view into another character. And then have the audience be that conduit almost.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. If that makes sense.
No, totally. I find this very interesting because I've been very intrigued by video game movies for a while now, and upon doing a bit more research for this episode, like seeing the ins and outs of why, I just got I found answers that make a lot of sense, and that was like a big one of them. But we're still talking about video game movies, and we can bleed into some video game songs if you so feel like it. But you were mentioning earlier how like why video game movies are so hard to make and how there's never been a quote unquote real good video game movie. And you pretty much hit the nail on the head with the reason you gave, where it takes you out of that first person perspective. And that's like the number one thing I thought of when speculating on this question. I'm like, well, you eliminate the what is the word?
The POV, the point of view.
Yes, like you eliminate the option of choice. You have to sit through a linear story now instead of exploring at your own leisure.
But the other thing is sometimes you can have movies that aren't technically video game movies that actually feel like video games.
Yeah.
Like you have like one example that one of my favorite examples is like probably the earliest like probably movies like Stay Alive, which even though that's cheesy, it's still really like it takes that horror video game idea.
Yeah.
But it puts it into like I can't fully explain Stay Alive because it's just it's a game, it's a movie that feels like a horror video game at times, and other times it's just like it could have been written a lot better.
Right, yeah.
Because it had so much potential. But but yeah, you can have movies and you can have another movie where it's more about like how you say like the Brotherhood of the Wolf, which is a French movie Jordan Vogt Roberts also recommended because he's nuts, and he said this movie feels like a Dark Souls and like Bloodborne game.
Oh wow.
From the early it's like a movie that's based in the 1700s, and like it's about these two fur trappers and stuff in France.
Oh, okay.
And basically I don't want to get into everything, but I heard that it's like if you really want to watch a really good version of a Dark Souls type movie,
right? Dark
Souls type video game, that's one of them.
Sounds cool.
Like I heard nothing but good things about it. And
nice.
It's like, yeah, but yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't hear good things about movies based off of video games, though. More often than not, it's just bad reviews across the board.
Yeah, we've seen like stuff like one of the best examples is obviously you probably just found out about him, Uwe Boll.
Yeah.
You just found out about him. I've known about him for years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's there are so many great things about Uwe Boll's movies that are just bad. They're just so bad that they make it look like The Room, but he's actually making a movie.
Oh, okay.
like you know how like The Room is just really bad?
Yeah.
Like
crossing into over so bad it's good territory, but yeah, I've seen it.
No, those movies are just really bad.
Boll's movies?
Oh yeah. And if there's like House of the Dead that he made, there's the movie House of the Dead that he made. There's the movie Alone in the Dark, which is also a video game movie. I believe he also did Blood Rain, I think.
I'm not familiar with that one. I haven't heard of that one.
But he did a few really bad video game movies.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to touch him in Hollywood because he's done all these really bad video game movies. Because he made House of the Dead into this cheesy, really bad like movie. I'm just like,
Yeah.
why you gotta do this?
Well, I can tell you exactly why he did it. Taxes.
Because tax. Go on and tell that.
So, between the 1970s and mid 2000s, German tax law said anything, any contribution or investment made into the filmmaking industry was 100% tax deductible. And they did this, and Germany did this as incentive to make movies that were not made in big American Hollywood studios. But as you can tell, if you're offering no taxes, a lot more people are going to do it to not do the taxes rather than out of a passion. And then the law also stated that any returns made on the movie, the law stated that only taxes would be paid to returns on the movie. So in other words, the worse the movie did and the less it made, the less taxes the person had to pay.
It's basically the producers. Like, have you ever heard about the Mel Brooks movie, The Producers?
I've heard of it, but I have unfortunately not see it.
It's that idea of like, if we make a flop in Broadway, then we'll get more money back because it's a flop. Because it's fraudulent and stuff. It was a joke in Producers because nobody in their right mind would actually do that.
And here we are.
And here we are with Uwe Boll, which later on in life he would actually fight his critics.
I heard about that. Yeah, he in boxing, right?
If you criticize his movie publicly and actually said really good, really interesting things about the movie, he'd be like, "Okay, we're gonna have a boxing match."
Oh my god, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. You love to hear it.
It's like basically the early 2000s. Basically, the early 2000s was a Wild West show of like video game movies being really bad.
Oh yeah, kind of. Sorry, go ahead.
For that stretch of time, I've never seen any more bad movies in bad video game movies.
Yeah, I mean, it was all because of these laws where hey, you don't got to pay money. But I think nowadays we're really moving, or like Hollywood is moving away from that, or who's ever making these movies, because like I haven't seen the Angry Birds movie, but I heard it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Like as compared to like 90s Super Mario Brothers movie and all that kind of stuff. And then like the other ones that came to mind, Sonic, I heard a lot of people liked. Especially since they had to push it back to entirely redo the CGI. And then the one I saw recently, too, was Detective Pikachu, which I actually really liked.
So to me, these are three really good examples. Angry Birds is more of an example of like the consumer market making a really good like version of like an app game almost. Basically an app game. And they didn't have a story for it. The Angry Birds game is not a story-driven game. It's not.
It's not. Wait, it's not? I've been following the lore for years.
What? It's not? Oh my gosh. No, it's not. And and the other thing is like those two other things. Detective Pikachu was a video game on the DS.
Right.
And it was really well done. Like the movie was really well done, and you can tell like when I was in film form, like the actual director came and he talked about the movie and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And he was a very nice guy, and he understood the fact that even though he wasn't a fan, he had people who were fans around him telling him what to put in. And the production design team was more fans of Pokemon, so they put in more Pokemon stuff. So the director,
that's really cool.
The director didn't know a lot about Pokemon, but he had people around him that knew a lot about the Pokemon. And he had the Nintendo company to deal with. And the Nintendo company is like...
Yeah, they weren't going to let anything bad slide.
Yeah. No, they weren't... I think they learned a lesson with Super Mario Bros. I think they did.
I think a big thing that they should focus on, because through my research, I found do you know the YouTube channel Game Theory?
Yeah, I used to watch him. I just think he's okay. He's not the best.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just find it very interesting because I like all that like this could possibly mean this kind of stuff. I like all that like theorizing stuff, and like so I find it very interesting. But I remembered I saw one a few months ago where he talked about video game movies, and I'm like, maybe I should watch that again before this episode just to like keep up with it. And like one of the things that he found in his research is that when making video game movies, studios don't really focus on the story. They're focused more on making the gameplay into a movie, which I think is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. You have the story, why wouldn't you roll with it?
So that's the I think last year we had a really bad video game movie, which was Monster Hunter with Mila Jovovich.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I forgot that movie came out.
You forget that really bad movies come out, and you're just like,
Yeah.
huh, Monster Hunter did come out with Mila Jovovich and the guy who directed Event Horizon.
Yeah.
But the thing is this, it's hard because I think what we're seeing is this. It's not like the movie that we're mad at. It's just more about like the storytelling needs to be at the center of it.
Right, exactly.
Like you can't just go into it being like, oh, we're going to make this kind of film and this kind of story.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to do that, then just, make your original story. Don't use these characters.
Because it's something we're starting to see in Hollywood where they're starting to run out of ideas.
I've kind of noticed that. I mean, how many live action remakes has Disney put out in the last 5 years?
So one of the things that really is starting to see with that is like the fact that they're running out of ideas means the fact that they're going to go for more content that's not normal. Yeah. So what we're seeing is like a new Dune movie, but that's fine. That's by the guy who directed Blade Runner. But the thing is, what we're seeing is more like questionable directing choices and questionable films being released.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree.
As a fan of like, I think video game movies are going to be easier to adapt because the people like my generation, the millennials, yeah, and some of your generation coming up, I think we're more focused from video games, so we're going to have a better way of, like Jordan Vogt also said this. He said, probably the next generation coming up will have more ideas on how to create those kinds of movies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I think like it's the creativity is kind of like running out with like Hollywood right now, and then we need like a new wave, a new era of people to come in and put like their experience and their thought process into it, and I think that could really like reinvigorate like the whole movie making industry.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I definitely think so. And it's just hard, too, because you mentioned it before, but like when you make a movie from a video game, you eliminate the player choice. You no longer have, the player making the choices. You're having the camera or the story go to point A, B, C, and a movie. Rather than like A, C, back to A, go to B, loop around, go to C, go to back to A, and then reach the end.
Yeah, it's something that we're starting to see a little bit more of is the fact that we're just trying to like, how are you going to tell this kind of story? How are you going to make this kind of film?
Yeah, exactly. And one that it's not a movie, it's more of a series, but one that I was watching recently is Dangan, it's a hard name, Danganronpa. So it's originally like a video game / visual novel, and it's like a whole like murder mystery thing. But the anime adaptation of it went through the exact same story points as the video game, but because you were no longer like investigating the crime scenes as the player itself, it didn't hit as well because you weren't discovering the things and piecing them together yourself. You were literally just being told, okay, crime was committed, now let's see what happened. There was like no in between, because they also tried to fit like 70 hours of gameplay into like 6.
So the thing that's with that, the problem is like with a complex murder mystery like that, Like, you can't just go into it being like, okay, I'm going to make a murder mystery.
Right.
And you have to connect with the characters. You have to connect with this. You can't just go into, like, a film and then... This is the other problem that I'm seeing. There's no real connection for a character, for the audience member to care about the characters.
Right.
What's going to make me care about these characters? What's going to make me like these characters? That's the questions that you should be asking. The questions that we're seeing is like, why is this character so important?
Yeah.
The questions that we're kind of seeing is like, okay, this character is important. Why? Oh, who cares? There's no point in asking why. There's just,
Exactly. Why do I care about this character? What is his motives? What does he stand for?
Yeah. And this is coming to the juxtaposition of like the fact that video game movies, you have to care about the characters.
Exactly.
Like instantaneously. There's no like you can't just go into a video game movie, okay, like I genuinely don't care, but
Right.
But the thing is like what I'm starting to see is like people are like, no, you should care about the characters and you should care about what these characters are doing.
Oh yeah, totally.
And this idea of like, I think the kind of movies that we're seeing is the movies that we're starting to see is just the fact that people are like me, like are fed up with like characters not that I don't connect with.
Right. A whole point of the whole reading books, movies, video games is relating to the characters. Yeah. And in some cases projecting yourself onto them.
Yeah.
And I think another problem the movie industry has is in a video game you have a lot more time. You're spending a lot more time with these characters, a lot more chance to connect with them. Movie, you get 2.5 hours at most to introduce the characters, connect with them, tell a story, and wrap it up in a satisfying conclusion. Of course, that is if you're not doing a sequel, which more often than not Hollywood is.
So what I would do is something like this. Like, let's say if I was doing like a movie like Time Splitters.
Right.
Time Splitters is a video game that's self-parody of movies and stuff like that. How am I going to make you care about a self-parody of movies and stuff in Hollywood? How am I going to do that? I'm going to make you like the character in the first opening minute of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you do. The thing that I don't see people doing and the thing that I don't see filmmakers doing is making me care about the character in the first minute of the movie.
Right.
Or making me unlike the character so much that I don't want him to win in any capacity.
Exactly.
You want to feel an emotion to a character. That's the great thing about like a show like Castlevania or a show like or like a stuff like that. We're getting like the anime content like Castlevania, like something like that. It makes you like the character in the first minute.
Right.
Like Dracula is a very sympathetic villain. You understand why he's like that. You understand what he is.
Right.
That's the thing that makes him sympathetic. Because you also understand the fact that he's not a bad guy. He just doesn't like being messed with. That's it.
Right, exactly.
And if you do that without just telling us about like, oh, he's a bad character. No, like, why is he a bad character? Why is he a villain?
Exactly. Show, don't tell.
Yeah. And this is the thing that I think Hollywood is forgetting their own rules of like show, don't tell. They're forgetting that rule.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes like, oh, we can make you care about the character because he's like this, because he's like that. No, that doesn't make me care about the character. That's the same problem that Star Wars has right now. You're not making me care about the character in the first minute of the movie.
Right, exactly.
And that's the problem right now, and that's the problem what they will be forever. Is they're just not focusing on what makes a character work.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Totally. It's hard. It's hard to say what's gonna happen because like they're very set in the like. I don't know about you, but I see that Hollywood is like very set on a particular formula, and I don't see them changing from that anytime soon. Because it's not like they really care if the movie works anymore. If people like it and it brings in money, why would they change it?
It's kind of asking them. It's kind of doing something like this. It's basically saying, you're getting comfortable. It's getting too comfortable with the status quo.
Right, exactly.
You're not thinking about storytelling. You're not thinking about this. And I've heard, and I unfortunately think that people like me and people like me and other filmmakers that have the same feeling and stuff, and storytellers are fed up with this.
Yeah.
I just think a lot of the audience for this content is fed up with this.
Yeah.
They are, because if you've been given a lot of bad movies over the years, you don't want to sit there and be like, I can make something better.
Yeah.
I can make something 10 times better. If you're starting to ask yourself, even as a person who's not into film, something must be better. Something can be better than this.
Yeah.
You can't just keep giving us this stuff and expecting us to like it.
I 100% agree. That's exactly like you said it better than I ever could, but like we're tired of the same thing over and over. Yeah. We're looking for somebody to break that mold, so to speak, to try something new. And yes, I get it, as time goes on, there's seemingly less and less new things to try, but that's the point of it being new. It's never been done before, so you have to go out and look for it.
I think people like me and other people like me are just going to start like making our own opportunities and making our own things, because we're sick and tired of being given the same stuff over and over again.
And I mean, like, now is great more than ever, because like a lot more young people are doing things earlier and earlier in life.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And yeah. But
I have to ask, we've been talking about the Mortal Kombat movie, what our thoughts were on. I totally forgot what we talked about. Why video game movies are so hard to make. And now, based on everything we've discussed, what are the movies that you... Like, if you could have... I'll say 3. I'll give you 3. If you could have 3 movies made into video games with guaranteed success, like they're going to be guaranteed to be good movies, which 3 video games would you like to see?
Personally, for me, Carnival is one of them. It's an old school arcade shooter. It's a very ridiculous, over the top game, and it's one of those games that I would say is like, I think it would be really interesting to see as a movie, because it's kind of homages horror. It kind of homages things in horror, but does its own thing at the same time. And I would kind of see it as like almost a survival horror movie.
Right.
Where these 2 kids have to escape out of, like, because of their own blind, like, kidness, they put in a token for, the opening intro would probably be about, like, they bet each other that they can put in a token for Terran token taker.
Right.
It's ridiculous. And then basically it basically teleports them into the carnival world.
Oh.
And they has to get back out so they have to use their wits, and they have to use their own like intelligence to get out of that situation.
Right.
And there's a bunch of evil things coming for them.
Yeah.
Like everything wants to get them.
Everything. Like clowns, like we're talking clowns and stuff.
We're talking clowns, we're talking a bunch of things. And the leader is like a guy who's like is a really evil person.
Right.
And you would find out over the course of that movie. That's kind of how I would do it.
That sounds really cool.
I would do that, and the other one that I would personally want to see is Time Splitters. Right. It's a ridiculous, over-the-top video game. It's kind of like a parody of a bunch of other movies.
Yeah, I remember you were talking about it a little bit before.
It's kind of like a video game movie that would be really fun to watch. It would probably be like a really fun comedy to watch.
Yeah.
A comedy action movie. Because it homages things about movies, but it doesn't call attention to what movie it is, actually.
Oh, really? So it's like subtle.
It's like completely subtle some of the time.
Interesting.
And like, if you know the movie, you're just like, that's really funny.
Yeah.
Oh my, like you're just sitting there just being like, that's really funny. I would probably have the first movie. I would actually have it a TV show, because it makes more sense as a TV show. So it would go over like the course of like, the first season would be the first adventures of him going against the Time Splitters.
Okay.
The main character.
Yeah.
and each episode would take place in a different year,
Oh, okay.
in a different year, and a different like
Right. Yeah. I see what
like it
you're
would
saying.
set up those ideas. So throughout the
that's cool.
series, you would see that. And the third one would probably be a version of Tony Hawk's Underground 2. I would love to see a version, like just not a version of that, but just a version of like a skaters just going nuts, like basically a really well written version of Tony Hawk's Underground 2 as a movie.
Right.
Would be awesome to see.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
totally.
So. Like just like the level of like stunts and stuff.
Oh yeah,
It's
totally.
so funny in its own right. Because if you're a fan of that game, you would just be like, this is really funny.
And what they should do is they should have Tony Hawk make a cameo in the movie, but just nobody knows who he is. Like Tony Hawk plays himself in the movie, but nobody recognizes him.
Oh yeah, there would be like I would love to make that movie, and it's just like I would have probably like you would follow a group of skaters who are trying to create their own like version of they love the video game, so the video game is in the universe and stuff.
Oh, smart.
So the idea is they're trying to create their own like world tour and stuff. But they cause so much destruction and stuff on the way and stuff. And the whole joke is like they get banned by this country. They got banned by this country. They got banned by that country. And the whole joke
Just
is
worldwide wanted.
just worldwide wanted. And it comes and I would just imagine it like that would actually be really funny because over the course of the movie they cause so much destruction and like at the end of like by the end of like when they leave a city, I'd actually have the total destruction of money that they did in the bottom.
Just like come up on screen.
Like as this much money, $10 million in destruction. And it just goes up every single time, like it's like an Indiana Jones thing, and you just see the tally. You just see like as they go to a different country, you just
And
see
it's whatever form of currency is used in that country.
And then you just at the end you see the total tally, and you're just like, oh no.
The total tally equals the budget of the movie.
Yeah, that's the whole joke. That's what I would do. I would love that.
Yeah, no, that'd be a really fun movie.
That'd be like a perfect video game version of Tony Hawk's Underground 2.
I guess it's my turn, but the problem is, I don't know. Like, I literally have Steam pulled up right now, looking at my games, and like none of them are really like story-heavy games. But I did come up with a few that I think would be cool. Number one, I think a super hot movie would be really cool. Do you know that game, right?
Kind of. Like,
yeah, so the whole purpose of the game is time only moves while you move, and there's like this whole computer virus thing. I don't know the semantics of the story, but the gameplay mechanic is time moves when you move. And I think if they get the story right, that could translate really well into a game, because like the story's there, but it's hidden a little bit. So you'd have to do some digging if you want to adapt that story. But I think that's the number one I was due.
Like it's kind of like a John Wick version.
Yeah, kind of.
Like you would pitch it as like a John Wick type movie.
Yeah.
Set in
time like John Wick in bullet time.
Like but you're just it could be very interesting. It could be. Like that's the thing. It could be very interesting.
If they do it, I like here's my thing. If people know what they're doing, I think any idea could be made interesting, but you have to do it right.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. And then I said like kind of as a joke movie, like it obviously wouldn't take itself seriously. I'd like to see like Rocket League as a movie. I just think that'd be a ridiculous idea.
Like I could imagine that as a really fun over the top like 80s movie almost.
Yeah.
Like an almost homage to the early 80s of like a version of like which one I'm thinking about. I know which one I'm thinking about, but I can't say the title of it.
Right. Okay.
But it's a certain movie from the 1970s.
Yeah.
And it's.
I just imagine like life-sized cars with a giant soccer ball, and they're just like flipping all over the place.
I would have a joke scene. I would have it be almost like a parody of those types of movies.
Yeah.
Where it would have a scene where where the main character's friend gets killed off midway through the movie, and then he goes to like the funeral and stuff, and then that's the whole like. It's kind of like parodying Top Gun and stuff.
Yeah.
So it'd be like that. Like that's how I kind of
like a whole underdog sports movie.
Yeah, like a whole underdog sports movie, but doesn't understand the fact that it's a joke.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole joke.
That'd be great. And now the third one. Oh, this one's a hard one. So ones I thought of were, once again, this would be another joke, but Balloons Tower Defense I thought would be a funny movie, but obviously no. That would just be Planet of the Apes. And then Fall Guys I thought of as another movie that could be cool if they did it right. It'd be kind of like a Running Man kind of movie where it's like a game show that like they're kind of trapped in and stuff. Maybe.
Yeah, like I could kind of see it like this. Like Fall Guys could be really fun if you make it more of like Smash TV, but a live action version of that.
Right.
Where if you stop for any second, you're gone. You're gone.
Into the goo.
Yeah. Like, if you ever heard of Smash TV, it's kind of like, that's how I kind of would pitch it as, like a movie that's so fast, but it takes place in like an abandoned city complex.
Yeah.
That's where it would be. Like, and people are like obsessed with this reality show of like Fall Guy. It's the big show. That's how I can imagine it.
I feel like there's a lot of those like movies that like, oh, look, there's a dystopian world and everybody tunes in for this one show. So I feel like that might be overdone. You'd have to do something really spectacular.
No, it would take place in modern day.
Oh, yeah.
It would take place in modern day, and the whole joke of it would be like, people are so obsessed with reality TV. Why don't we give them something that's so realistic that they'll be like, no way, this is real.
Yeah.
Like they'll put out like, I would imagine a scene like in a boardroom where they're like, how are we going to make this look like this is fake?
Right.
Everything they're seeing is fake.
Jelly beans.
No, like, I think the idea I'm trying to get at is like, I would play around with this idea of everything not being portrayed to the media as real.
Right. Oh, okay.
So everybody thinks that it's not real.
So they market it as not real. And
they market it as not real, but everything that happens in the show is real. That's how we do it.
Interesting. Yeah, actually, that like after hearing that could be a really good movie. That one could work.
Because it plays with the idea of like making fun of those shows.
Right.
By saying like, oh, like things like wrestling is fake.
Right. Exactly.
And like taking that and being like, what if it isn't? What if it isn't actually fake? What if we see on TV is actually what happens?
I mean, I do feel like the some of those wrestlers are in genuine pain at some points.
No, they are. And but the thing is, what I'm doing is like, what I'm doing is like, is asking myself those questions. What's going to make it different? What's going to make it stand out?
Right.
What can make it connect to the idea of the video game by doing something different with it?
Right.
Like that's what I'm doing. I'm taking like a fan of the video game being like, okay, what would I want to see? What would I want to see on screen?
Yeah.
That's the main questions that you ask, that I ask myself as a movie fan and a video game person. Like you can't just be like, oh, like I want to see Tony Hawk's Underground. How are you going to make it? How are you going to make a film like that? How are you going to do a film like that? How are you going to not call attention to that stuff?
Right.
That's the question. Like, I wouldn't call it Tony Hawk's Underground. I call it TH World Tour.
There you go.
Because people will be like, oh, what's TH stand for? Tony Hawk. And people will be like, really? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, that's the whole joke of it. And, but it's just this idea of like, you have, like, this is the one thing that I always say this is the one thing that I think is really great, is when you're making an idea, you have to think about, would you want to see that on screen?
Right.
Would you want to see this movie and pay for it?
Totally.
For this amount of money. That's what you have to start thinking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the next generation of filmmakers are starting to think about. What can we see on screen?
Right.
What do we want to see on screen? Yeah.
I think that applies to, and I'll leave this. This will be my last closing thought, but I think that applies to like any form of media. Like if you're making music, would I want to listen to this? If you don't want to listen to it, why is anybody else going to? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is also my closing thought, because it's something that you always think about, and this is something that's very important. It just, what you want to see as a fan is also what other fans want to see.
Right, exactly.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, you have the idea, and with 7 billion people, the odds of nobody sharing that interest with you are astronomical. Yeah, but that's a really good way of looking at it. Like, it's cool to have an idea or like a concept, but you have to flesh it out to what you would want to see.
Yes.
So I definitely think that's a really good way of looking at it when it comes to just the creative field in general.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, we have run out of time, which is a shame because I really like this one and I feel like I could keep talking about this for like ever.
It is very interesting.
Yeah. Especially like once you figure out like all the reasons why video game movies haven't done good, it's because nobody wants them to. Well, nobody did want them to. I feel like it's a little different now.
Yeah, totally.
But that's going to do it for this week. I know we didn't do really like an end segment, but I feel like the 3 movies into video games was one enough. It just didn't have a fancy title, so sorry about that. Anyway, and I will see you all next time. Until then, have a maximum week. Goodbye.
Bye.